Hi, I am Quizon Letana. In this video, we are going to talk about bread, or in our regional languages, tapay or tinapay. My presentation is entitled Tinapay kayo dyan, the bread as a cultural storyteller and vehicle in the Philippines and Southeast Asia. In this presentation, we are going to first inquire on the history, including the linguistic evolution and widespread popularity of bread, or tinapay or tapay, in the Philippines and Southeast Asia, a region where no wheat grows. Second, impart the religious impetus for the presence of bread in Southeast Asia. And third, put forward the cultural and societal relevance of the bread that became a Southeast Asian household staple next to rice. Mung, Kauchi, Nombong, Panmi, Kanampang, Roti, Roti, Mianbao, Pan, Tinapay. In a region that does not grow wheat, it is surprising that bread is a widely available and popular foodstuff in Southeast Asia. In fact, in the Philippines, bread, cakes, pastries, pies, and similar products is the largest manufacturing industry. This phenomenon suggests the enduring popularity of bread in the region and especially among Filipinos. In this discussion, we inquire on the history of the arrival, transition, and linguistic evolution of pan as a Spanish word and object to its equivalent tinapay in Tagalog. Also, we will recall how the Roman Catholic Church played a key role in the arrival of bread in the archipelago. And, last but not the least, how this transition of pan to tinapay is a unique linguistic phenomenon that resulted from transculturation between a metropole and its colony. Humans have known to ferment food and beverage since 9,000 years ago. Food fermentation is a common practice in Asia, especially in the Southeast, as its preservation ability allows food to be available during the monsoon seasons when there is fluctuating food supply. Tapay is the common term for rice cake and any fermented food or beverage found in Southeast Asia. In the Philippines, as well as Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, tapay is made using rice or cassava with tuba or wine toddy or similar alcoholic beverage as a fermenting agent. The earliest record of the word tinapay came in its direct cognate tinapay with I as the last consonant, which appeared in 1521 in Antonio Pigafetta's lexicographic notes during his voyage with Ferdinand Magellan in the first circumnavigation, describing it as Aceti Fogacie de Yitzo, which, when translated to English, means a certain kind of rice cake. Juan Felix de la Encarnación's Diccionario Bisaya-Español, published in 1885, recorded the first usage of the exact gloss tinapay, now with the last consonant Y, defined as a kind of crustless flat cake made of rice flour by the natives. They knead it very thin and shape it to the size of a small plate like that used for a hikara. They put 2 small pieces of calamay or sugar between the top and the bottom before pressing it into a flat figure of a half globe. The word is also used by Visayans as a synonym for bread made with wheat flour and for host. While some scholars may refer to tapay and tinapay as equivalents, I would like to argue from a linguistic perspective that tapay is a base word and tinapay is an affixed form of the base word, presenting an important morphological and semantic change between the two words. The infix in, a Tagalog morpheme that changes a word to the past tense when inflected between the first consonant, which is t in the word tinapay, and the first vowel a, was attached to tapay, forming a new word t plus in plus apay or tinapay. The infix in denotes the next stage or full development, and at the same time connotes that a process or action was deliberately applied or done to an object. Therefore, tapay, as how rice cake is commonly referred to in several Southeast Asian countries, became tinapay in Tagalog to signify that the tapay indeed underwent the process of fermentation, and that fermentation was deliberately applied to the tapay. We can also see this linguistic feature in many of our words such as kamay to kinamay, halo to hinalo, bayo to binayo, saing to sinaing, luto to linuto, and kain to kinain, among others. In the other Southeast Asian countries, their respective European colonial masters made the introduction of the bread in their colonial societies. The French in the French Indochina consists of the countries of Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, the Dutch in Indonesia, and now a part of Indonesia that became the independent state of East Timor, and the British in Burma, now Myanmar, as well as the British Protectorate Federation of Malaya, now the countries of Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei Darussalam. The arrival of Spanish immigrants in the Philippines that started in 1565 was a significant part of colonial history. However, in the Philippines, the more important and compelling reason for the need for the Spanish staple pan, that is bread, to be transported to the new colony was the host or ostia used in Roman Catholic Mass, with wheat flour as the only ingredient allowed and made only by the religious. The growing demand for ostia to be administered to the growing number of Christian converts in the islands, as well as the scarcity of wheat flour in the archipelago, fueled the establishment of the Royal Bake Shop. The Royal Bake Shop, the first bake shop in the Philippine Islands authorized by no less than the King Felipe IV of Spain, was established in 1625 inside Intramuros and became the monopoly provider of ostia due to its ingredient and manufacturing restrictions. The creation of host or ostia in a new colony that does not speak their language and has no reference to wheat necessitated for the sourcing of a local counterpart. Tinapay from Pigafetta's word list was chosen and has since become synonymous with the Holy Host archipelago-wide, eventually losing its connection to rice cake and linking itself more strongly with host and consequently to the general food category of pan, where the host is but only one of its classifications. Feliz Prudente Santamaria, a critically acclaimed Philippine culinary historian, said that this borrowing was perhaps mainly due to the semblance between the tinapay and host. Both were white, circular, and about identical in size. Tinapay was since consistently used as equivalent to bread in explaining important church doctrine and history, such as Jesus' feeding of a large crowd through the miraculous multiplication of 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, Jesus Christ referring to himself as the bread of life, tinapay ng buhay, and Christ's use of bread at the Last Supper, asking his disciples to eat it as a symbol of his body, together with drinking wine as the symbol of his blood, in remembrance of him. With these mentioned references to and symbolisms of bread in the Holy Bible and in church life and history, the tinapay gained high esteem and popularity among the people. Tinapay, which was called pan de Castilla or bread made from wheat flour in 1732, became a sought-after food option even at a time when bread was considered more expensive than rice. The establishment of the Royal Bake Shop made wheat flour available to both the Spanish immigrants and locals, allowing them to make their own bread at home. Chinese immigrants used Chinese flour that was cheaper than the wheat flour from Mexico. Japanese traders also sold flour from their own country. The availability of other sources of flour that can be used as substitute for wheat flour brought competition to the flour market. Eventually, more panaderia opened. The panaderia became the bakery at the turn of the 20th century, the American period. The Americans brought automatic and modern equipment which streamlined the baking process and standardized procedures inside the panaderia. The new colonizers issued sanitation permits that became the impetus for standardized hygiene and cleanliness protocols, both in the baking area and among the bakers themselves. With the sanitation improvements inside the bakery, the arrival of new and relatively cheaper wheat flour from the US and Canada, as well as the introduction of new baking ingredients like baking powder and yeast that cut the baking time in half while further improving the quality and taste of bread, the local demand for tinapay increased at an unprecedented speed. In 1958, the first flour mill in Asia, Republic Flour Mills, now RFM Corporation, was built in the Philippines and began operations. In 1976, the National Grains Authority, now National Food Authority or NFA, issued business license to 4,244 bakeries, 92 bake shops, and 1,079 hot pandesal establishments. In 2016, the annual survey of Philippine business and industry recorded 7,563 bread, cakes, pastries, pies, and similar bakery products establishments, making the bread manufacturing industry the leading business in the country in terms of number of establishments, comprising 27% of the total. In conclusion, we learned that the Spanish colonizers, as well as the French, Dutch, and British, were responsible for the arrival of bread in the Philippines and Southeast Asia. The rice cake or tinapay was a strategic substitute for the name of a very important church element, the host or ostia. The ubiquity of tinapay may have presented it as a practically negligible foodstuff, but this same commonness made it a staple, stable, and easily relatable item to the general populace. The Spanish colonizers' borrowing of the word tinapay, an everyday stuff, and attaching it to the host, one of the, if not the most important and revered elements of the church and the Christian faith, essentially bridged the ordinary and the divine, making a foreign religion and God approachable and real to the people's consciousness and daily life. Furthermore, the borrowing of the word tinapay by the Spanish from the Filipino language was a positive cultural appropriation, specifically falling under transculturation, which is defined as the development of cultural hybrids. Both cultures benefited from the exchange, a word for a valued item from the Filipinos to the Spaniards, and the Word of God, ang tinapay ng buhay, from the Spaniards to the Filipinos. Tinapay is a most egalitarian food, especially in the Philippines. If there would be a pambansang agahan, it will be pandesal. People in all walks of life eat this type of bread on a daily basis. Pandesal, literally bread of salt in English, can regularly be seen in the table of both the rich and the poor, usually eaten during breakfast or in the morning or afternoon merienda, paired with hot chocolate drink or coffee. Its compactness, nutritional value, and affordable price allow it to be a go-to food for the working class, especially those living in the cities and in fast-paced environments. In Quezon City, Philippines, a popular 82-year-old bakery celebrates the World Pandesal Day every 16th of October as a civic and cultural event for promoting and preserving the time-honored tradition of bread making, and at the same time highlighting the need to address global hunger and poverty through the distribution of thousands of free pandesal to orphanages, diverse children's shelters, frontliners during the pandemic, and urban poor communities. Tapay or tinapay was a popular rice cake snack in Southeast Asia and continues to be in many parts of the region. The advent of the Roman Catholic religion in the 1500s brought with it the host, the ostia, that is used in administering the Holy Communion. The need to identify a local counterpart for the host prompted the Spanish friars to use tinapay for the symbol for Christ's body, as well as in explaining biblical narratives that mentioned bread or wheat, especially in a country and region that did not grow any. Tinapay afterwards lent itself exclusively to kneaded wheat bread and extensively to all kinds of bread made of wheat flour. Today, it is generally unknown that tinapay once meant a rice cake or kakanin. Tinapay is an exceptionally unique food commodity. It is a symbol of equality, a staple that sustains the lives of many, and it is ordinary. But in its ordinariness, it is also a vital storyteller of our country and region's histories, as well as our tangible and intangible cultural heritage. In its ordinariness, it has become an indispensable food commodity that sustains the life of societies for generations. More importantly, its ordinariness does not limit to lend itself to that which is high and divine. It has the intrinsic ability to be identified as common, but could effortlessly exude deific characteristics. It is no surprise, then, that Jesus Christ referred to himself as the bread of life, the sustenance of the body and of the soul, to anyone who will partake and eat. Kaya, tinapay kayo dyan!